Welcome back to the Stampede Blue Colts cast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matt Danley. Thank you guys for coming back, hanging out with me tonight as the Indianapolis Colts start training camp officially tomorrow. Colts arrived. Coaches were all there. Some interesting takes from what we saw, at least on their day of arrival. So we've learned a lot. We've got a lot of news, strangely enough, to kind of really jump into here, especially as the Colts were just full of it today. So let's just kick this off. This is going to be our newsy show, and then we are going to go through the wide receivers and do our breaking down the position for that. And we're going to do that right after this show. So if you guys are around, you got two shows in you tonight. We're going to do 2 shows, get them up. That way we have them up and published before training camp kicks off. So again, before we start, get over to Stampede Blue, get all your Indianapolis Colts news and notes and everything else. Training camp's going to be a wild time. It's going to be a lot of fun to dig through all this. We're going to have all of it up on the site, everything. So also remember our man Mike Ernest from Remax Advanced Realty and Indy Home Pros team, the #1 selling real estate team in Indiana, is doing the Colts cast tonight as always. So we do give them this excellent show to cover for us and to help us out here. And Mike's a great dude and he knows what he's doing. So again, as always, if you guys know anybody or yourself are looking for a home or looking to sell your home, make sure you guys are getting a hold of Mike Ernest. He is the best in the business. You guys need to hook it up. So now let's get into some news. Anthony Costanzo, Denzel Good, Austin Howard, all placed on the active NFI, which is basically the non-football injury list today. Basically, it's the active PUP list, just a different set of circumstances for the injury. I mean, non-football related, actually. So pretty simple to understand. They can come back anytime, just like the active PUP, but that's it. The only thing that hampers it is if it goes through training camp, they get into the season, and they're planning to extend it, then that's when it becomes for a designated period of time or a minimum amount of time, I believe. So that's 3 tackles, and it looks daunting thinking about it, right? We're all talking about the Colts offensive line this year, and now we've got 3 tackles, 2 starters, and probably the first backup at either position. All 3 going on the NFI list. Not that big a deal, but it sounds like, it comes off as a big deal. Costanzo is expected to miss a few practices, apparently. At least that's what Andrew Walker had in his initial article on the situation. But we don't have a whole lot of information on Denzel Good and Austin Howard, how they came about their injuries. So nor do we really have a good idea of when they'll be back. The one thing that we do have is Frank Reich will be talking to the media, obviously, tomorrow after practice. That'll be key to find out what's up with them, how long they're going to be out. I'm hoping, and we should all really truly hope, because this is the first offensive line that the Colts have had some legitimate depth, right? They've got depth. We've talked about this before. They've got their starters, and there's basically 1 or 2 guys who can back up either position at each position. They've got some interchangeable parts amongst the depth. That's nice. Haig is the guy who can move in and out. Deshaun Bond is a guy at center and guard, both. Braden Smith, what do we want from him? I think this is now we talked about this the other day on the offensive line setup, breaking down that position. But I really think that Braden Smith, moving him out to tackle for some of these practices while these guys are gone, is a smart thing to do, at least working him in there. Okay. I'm not talking about completely changing this dude's position. What I am saying is that he's not a starter at either guard position. He's a guy with the requisite length and strength and athleticism that you want technically from a tackle. Use him and move him out there occasionally. You know what I mean? And they will. I think they will anyways. But this is the perfect setup for him, not to become a tackle, but to become more versatile, to become more of a weapon within that depth for the Colts. That also makes him, not that he wouldn't make the team anyways, that also makes him a much higher commodity within the roster, right? Maybe they can fudge on the offensive line one piece and put somebody on the practice squad because he's, that versatile type player. With Haig, basically, Haig's been taking snaps or given snaps or whatever at center as well. So that's interesting. There's LaRaven Clark, not Denzel Good in this case, but they've got some solid depth, and it's going to be fun to watch. Jack Mewhort, Matt Slauson, whoever doesn't start there. They've got, and they actually talked about Mewhort moving out to tackle. I'm not a fan of that personally. I think he's a good lineman. I think he could be okay out there. We've seen him play, and it didn't work out real well, but I mean, it wasn't for an extended period of time. I think that at worst, if they send Jack Mewhort out there, I think they're okay. But I don't think that he needs to be getting a ton of snaps at tackle. I think that you work on him in the interior, try to get him boosted back up and reacclimated to that position, because I think he's going to be a real vital part of this offensive line more than anything, to be quite honest. So Costanzo, like I said, not expected to be long. Tomorrow's going to be crucial as far as for what we hear about the other two guys, the other two tackles, Good and Howard. Howard's expected to start. Good's pretty much his backup. And they even talked about him being the backup at left tackle, which, that's good. I've only seen him on the right side of the line, though, as far as I can remember. So not bad news necessarily, just not great news, and a little bit that we just don't understand all of it right now. The good news is that we do have Costanzo, apparently ready to make his comeback within days. So that's always a plus. He's been one of the most impactful guys since he's been drafted. Always playing, always pretty good. And Andrew Luck wouldn't be in the league right now had he not been his left tackle. And the Colts had to play with that position too. So he'd be Andrew Luck might be in a few pieces. So speaking of Andrew Luck, another piece of news here. They were talking about, this philosophy with playing quarterbacks in preseason anyways, obviously got to Andrew Luck. Is it basically the question was kind of laid out as in, is it too early to say that he's not going to be playing in week one? Frank Reich didn't say he's going to play in week one. His exact quote, let me double check on this, because it wasn't he will play in week one. It was you should count on him playing or something of the sort. I want to double check that just because it the way he, where the heck is it? I know this is bad dead air, bad radio, but anyways, that was the gist of it. It was I would count on him playing in week one. A lot of wasted time, just to reiterate that. So my bad. But at any rate, he doesn't say that's. I mean, he more or less says that's the plan. We want him to play in week one. It doesn't mean he's going to, as far as I'm concerned. But the fact that they've got that kind of in their minds right now is a positive. Andrew Luck's going to play first preseason game. You think he's going to play? That tells me, as much as this coaching staff has seen his progress and his process through his rehab, that they are that confident in him and where he's at currently. Not where they think he's going to be here in a few weeks, but where they think he is currently. I think that if that's the case, you're telling me he's going to play. If the coach is telling me he's going to play in preseason week one, that tells me that the coach thinks he's pretty darn close to 100% right now, if not at it. And probably mentally, as far as, and I don't mean how he feels about himself, but mentally and in terms of, does he have the playbook down? How is he reading the offense or the defense, in meetings and on the whiteboard and all that other stuff? To me, that tells me that Frank Reich thinks Andrew Luck is this close to being Andrew Luck of old. So that's encouraging, and I think that's really cool. And tomorrow, I mean, he's going to throw tomorrow. He's going to throw Friday. And they said Saturday is going to be his day off because Sunday is in all pads, and they're going to have him throw on Sunday. That's what they want. So there's your 4-day schedule for Andrew Luck. Thursday and Friday, he's going to play or practice and throw. Saturday will be his off day. Sunday, he's going to practice and throw as well in full pads. So that's, like I said, encouraging. That's fun. That's a lot to digest here. So if you're going to Colts camp tomorrow, you're going to see Andrew Luck throw. That's going to be exciting. They said that when they saw him in California throwing, he was throwing to Rodgers. Apparently, at least Reich says so. Luck wouldn't kind of talk about who was there, who wasn't, but they were talking about him in California and how he basically was opening it up, that Frank Reich was watching his tape and saw him open it up and go basically 100%, saw him progress through each video that he watched of him. I think that's great. I think that's, this should make every Colts fan super excited about this team. Look, we all have our reservations about some of the roster, but the roster is young. Frank Reich loves that. He thinks that there's something exciting about bringing these rookies in and that they're going to have, a lot of play time. That's fun. That's fun. It should be fun for Colts fans. And I think that most Colts fans do think that way. And that is part of the excitement that's coming into this season. While the rest of, nationally, a lot of the national guys, a lot of other people, obviously, people who are doing stuff within the division feel that, the Colts are a pushover. I don't think that anybody, I want to say on that team, but that's almost cliche to say. I don't think anybody on that team thinks they're a pushover, but obviously they don't. But I think that when you look at the youth that they've got at the positions that they've got, that should be some exciting. Now, look, we understand everybody's not going to pan out. Obviously, UDFAs do not often pan out. There's often a guy that makes it to the roster, or often, two guys that makes it onto the roster. But just spitballing here for this linebacking core. Think about it. Darius Leonard, Sky Moore, and whatever, Matthew Adams, whoever. Not Zaire Franklin, but, one of the other guys. Yeah, Zaire Franklin. One of those guys. Say those three end up being the starters. That's a lot of rookie, in one place, in one position. But if they put them all three on the field, they think that that's a group, right? And if those three guys, if just a couple of them really play well, or even just one of them plays really well, that's an improvement upon last year's linebacking core, because the Colts linebackers were awful last year. For the most part. John Bostic, I'll give Bostic his credit. We smashed him early in the season. He came back and played pretty well. But just by and large, all this youth on this linebacking core is going to be a lot of fun. We all look forward to Nate Hairston improving. We look forward to Quincy Wilson becoming a starter, a legit starter in the league, and actually making some moves, in my opinion. And then, we've got some comfort with maybe Moore and Desir on the other end. Geathers and Hooker are expected back. Fairly soon. Okay. Those two guys, we know what the potential for Geathers is. We know what the potential for Hooker is, especially if he plays a full season. The defensive line's fun. The defensive line's probably one of the deepest units on the team, on the roster. Okay. So we've got a lot of potential on that defense. It's going to take a lot to get that chemistry all moving together at one pace, right? But the fun, the thought, the excitement, it's all there. Okay. And we know what the offense is going to do behind Andrew Luck: a better offensive line, exciting running backs, in my opinion, a couple of them, at least a couple of them. Tight end group's tight as far as I'm concerned. The wide receiver group is way underrated. And of course, people are going to say it because they don't know any of them. I don't think so. I personally don't think it's an underrated, or I don't think that they're a group that is going to be a pushover. They're definitely not going to be the worst group in the league, like most people think. Behind T.Y. Hilton, what do you got? Well, I think you've got Chester Rogers coming back to really prove, what he's got and what he's missed out on. And then I think you've got a couple guys behind him. I think Deion Kane's going to be an improvement from what they had at number 3 last year. And I think that you've got interest in Darius Fountain. Everybody knows I love Krishawn Hogan, KJ Brent. These guys, there's some legit competition of worthy NFL wide receivers, in my opinion, that are going to be fighting for roster spots. This is going to be a lot of fun. So let's kind of got off on a tangent there, but that's fun for me. Thinking about Andrew Luck coming back now, crappy projections on the season, 2-14 from whatever it was. Other people giving him 4, 5, 6 wins. I think Andrew Luck, and I told you guys this earlier. I think Andrew Luck legitimately makes the Colts a 500 team at the jump. From the time that he is on the field in a game, he makes the Colts a 50-50 shot to win the game. He's going to have bad games. probably early in the season. He's going to have some excellent games, though, too. If you can time those excellent games up and those bad games, you can win a few of the games he has bad games against bad teams. You get him in a couple good games against some of the better teams on their schedule, and a lot of things can happen. We all know that once Andrew Luck gets into the playoffs, that Andrew Luck is a really difficult guy to get out. I mean, Kansas City couldn't do it with a massive lead, right? After his initial loss his rookie year in Baltimore, when he took the team, everything progressed, guys. He took that step back, got injured, played through it, missed a year. Now he's back and pissed and extremely excited. I can't tell you guys how excited I am for this team. I want to see the youth continue to play and rise and fight and battle. I'm so stoked to be at camp, to be quite honest with you guys. I cannot wait to see what this team actually has. I love that Reich has these guys talking about live hitting drills and all this stuff where they go live for 10 minutes or something like that. That's going to be exciting. There's going to be some injuries. There's going to be some, injuries are going to happen in camp, guys. So forget about it. They'd happen if it weren't physical. Somebody'd step on a hill wrong and twist their ankle. Stuff like that's going to happen. This team has to come in with a much better mindset than they've come in with in several years past. That's coaching. That's physicality. That's work ethic. That's get your butt to the next drill right now because we're snapping it through. This is all things that Frank Reich brings that Chuck Pagano didn't. And if we deal with some injuries, we're going to deal with some injuries. So what? The team is not going to be worse for wear because one guy, as long as Andrew Luck is healthy, one guy is going to absolutely murder a season because of health. These guys are going to be hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody that's probably never been hurt or hasn't been hurt much is going to get hurt. It just happens, guys. We know this is true. I mean, especially if you've paid any attention to the Colts whatsoever in the past several years, you know that it's going to happen eventually. So be excited. Be happy to see this youth on the field. Be happy to watch some really good camp battles this year. Pay attention to who's winning what rep against what offensive lineman, defensive lineman. Who's the guy that can cover in camp? Even it's just camp. I mean, and even when we get into the preseason, it's just preseason. It's just this, it's just that. Watch what they're doing. Scout them. Are they making the right adjustments or are they getting lucky? These are all things that will play out. Some things happen in preseason because you get lucky. That's why they say it's just preseason. But you sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes it's just good skill and good fundamentals. We'll see a lot. But this Colts team has me excited for the buildup. Yes, I think that they could reasonably make the playoffs. Okay, whether it be wild card, squeaking by in a 9-win division, 10-win division, or something like that. Those are possibilities. But you have to be on board with what Chris Ballard's saying about the process, the couple years that we go forward. This is going to be what is so exciting about it. You're going to see that. I think we're going to see that Chris Ballard knows how to build a team, knows how to get this team right, and Frank Reich is the perfect head coach for this process. It's going to be exciting, guys. I'm excited for it. I hope you guys are too. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to the rest of the news here in just a second. And don't forget, we've got another podcast coming up right after this. We're going to do the receivers and get into that. So make sure you guys are sticking around for that. But we'll be back here in about 10, or here in just a couple seconds. All right, I fumbled my way through the pre-break, and now let's get into the rest of the news. The Colts signed safety Shamarko Thomas, latest played for the Buffalo Bills. I don't know what this does necessarily for the Colts. It does give them some depth. He is not a lifetime special teamer, but he is a special teams type guy. So that's something that they're getting in him. He's just not an overly productive guy, especially the past couple years. And I don't really understand what it is, but there are no stats on him for the last 2 years on Pro Football Reference, none. But he's played in a lot of games. I mean, he's played in 60 games in his career. This is a guy who has some experience. He is going to be 27 this year. If he's already 27. But the Colts, I mean, in response to this, they waived or released or whatever you want to call it, Jonte Baldwin. That to me is fine. There's no, I mean, he's another corner, but that's fine. That's not really an issue at all. And no disrespect to him, it's just not. When he came into the league, though, Thomas, his first season, he was productive in Pittsburgh, 30 tackles, 29, played in 14. He's played in 11, 15, 8, and 12 games in succession. So, I mean, this is a guy with a lot of experience. He's a guy who's going to bring depth with Geathers and Malik Hooker out currently right now. These snaps are going to be crucial for a lot of safeties, a lot of him, and similar to the offensive line. When you've got opportunity to get some of these depth guys some extra snaps, whether it be in camp, preseason, or whatever, it's going to help your team. It's going to help the competition. It's going to help the guys understand the playbook, be involved more. So I think this is a good move. It's a smart move. You get a little bit of not necessarily leadership, but you get some veteran presence in there as well. Guy who's been in the league, played a lot of games in the NFL. That can't hurt, okay? Because a lot of the guys, think about it, this time of year, you end up seeing some guys that come in with 1-2 years total of game experience, 16 to 20 games, something like that, not much, and they end up being depth guys. This guy's played 60 games in the league, and he's still fairly young. He's still in that kind of the age range. He's kind of at the top of it, but he's still in that 27, 28 age range that kind of Ballard seems to kind of cut off anything else on. So signing him is, in my opinion, it's a good move. It's not an exciting move necessarily, but it's a good move. He can get the experience he needs, or the practice time he needs within this system now while those two are out. When he comes back, maybe he pushes one of the guys off the roster, maybe not. But there will be competition for that spot, and that's what's going to start now. Those guys are going to get rotated in a little bit. We're going to see who's actually going to stick. And then some of the no-name guys, at safety, those guys are the ones that are going to be fighting with a guy who's got 60 games of, experience. So going to be interesting safety position. Hopefully those guys are back, both Hooker and Geathers. We can't really have those guys out for too long. Little bit of news on the Breeland situation. He is scheduled to come to the Colts for a visit, and I don't know when that is, to be quite honest with you. I've not seen a date, but the feeling apparently within the Chiefs is that they're not letting him leave without a contract. With that, I've always, and you guys, if you've watched or listened at all, you know that I like the thought of Breeland coming in. Experience. He's a guy who attacks the ball. I think he'd be perfect in this system, and he really improves, in my opinion, not only the competition at cornerback, but he almost puts forward a better prospect as long as he and all the rest of the corners are healthy. Whoever starts in those two spots is going to be better than what they would be had he not be signed. So if he gets it, great. If not, he's going to push the other two guys to the top. That's fine too with me. So I would like to see Breeland actually get signed. The Colts have a crap ton of money. I get it. You don't spend it just to throw it out the window, but you're getting an experienced guy here and a guy who, in my opinion, fits the system perfectly. So we'll see. Does he leave Kansas City and take on the other two visits that he had scheduled? Then, I think it was Colts and Browns, if I'm not mistaken. If that happens, we'll see. We don't know that, but like I said, if he comes in and the Colts sign him, no matter who starts at corner, whether it be him or the other two, or somebody else for that matter, I think that you get a better starting tandem as your boundary corners for that. Harrison could be in the mix there too. What does that do with the nickel slot, if anything at all? We'll see. I think that's a good. If the Colts can get him back in the building, they should sign him. We'll see what happens with that. If Kansas City lets him leave, so to speak, or if he just leaves on his own to try to drive his price up, maybe, or something like that. We'll see what happens. If they don't sign him, that could be an indication that Ballard thinks that that's what's going on. He's not going to exceed that number. He's told us that in the past. He's not lying to us. He will not exceed a number that he sees for Bashaud Breeland. So we'll see what happens with that. Interesting with Marlon Mack, apparently suffered an injury in training camp last year. Said that he kind of felt it all through the season. Obviously that, ended up knocking him out to an extent. He ended up having surgery. He's back 100%. I mean, I just don't think it can be overstated that you've got Mack and two rookies. They're going to hang on to Turbin. It sounds like, guys, this is, we've seen things turn and twist in a matter of moments in the past. But it sounds like Turbin, they like him in there. They say it's unfortunate. Frank Reich did anyways, but we're going to basically, we love him in the locker room. We love him on the field. Sounds like Turbin's going to be hung on, and that will give somebody a roster spot for 4 weeks, but who will that be? So that's interesting because we're going to have Mack, we're going to have Wilkins, we're going to have Hines, Christine Michael, Ferguson. These guys are all going to be battling for this spot. And I think with Marlon Mack healthy and ready to go, and he played through the entire season with an injury, even a minor injury, guys. Come on. You've all done something to where you've injured yourself and you can't even walk to the kitchen to get yourself a drink because you got a big toe cramp or just whatever it is. This dude played through in a season with an injury. That's something. If you've ever played football in the past, it doesn't matter if it's a Charlie horse. When you get out there on the field, it kind of goes away. But the next day is even worse than the day of the game or previous to the game. You know how that is. I think that this just signals that he's much tougher than we expected. And I was kind of thinking about this as well, being that it was his shoulder. Does this, and not the not the excuse route, but does this kind of give him maybe a little more leeway and maybe kind of a pass from last year in his pass protection? Frank Reich said today that he likes the pass protection from all the guys. That and he said even Hines. He didn't say even Mack. So that tells you that Mack was in the above group, so to speak, that he mentioned or that they've seen thus far, no OTAs, so on and so forth. That they liked what he was doing, or just whatever however they're doing. He mentioned he said all of them, but put in there even Nyheim Hines, which I think Hines is a pretty good pass blocker. Definitely not for a lack of effort if he's not great, but. Excuse me. Mack being able to pass protect, Mack being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, Mack being able to hit it in between the tackles, and be able to make his decisions outside of the tackle box. Those are all very key. I think that it just signals to me what a tough duty is too. So watching him come back, watching how all of this plays out in the backfield is super exciting. Nothing but young guys back there, and a couple veterans who have been back. I mean, Ferguson's young. Christine Michael's not old. He's only been in the league, 3-4 years. But Turbin's kind of in that upper range. But Turbin brings a lot. Turbin brings the ability to carry the ball more than just third and short. But that's kind of going to be his pigeonhole. That's where he's going to be. Reich also said that he felt that they had a bunch of 3-down backs. That's a good sign. Because that doesn't mean that they can just catch the ball out of the backfield. That means, like I said earlier, he feels that they can all pass block, that they can all do their own and hold their own. I think that's exciting and important. This is, a lot of news on the day before camp, to be quite honest with you. A lot of things are pretty interesting coming right now. Not only that, but let's look at Shamarko Thomas for a second, and not necessarily his play, but Trey Boston was signed from to the Cardinals today as well. So there's one of the best safeties available off the market. They didn't sign Kenny Vaccaro. To me, that also tells you, if they didn't, that they've got a lot of expectations for Hooker and Geathers. Expectations for them to play well, expectations for them to come back soon, that they're almost ready, that they're okay, they're just getting through their plan as well. So that should be something else that we consider thinking about it with this safety group. If they thought that they could be without one of them, Kenny Vaccaro, Trey Boston, they would have gotten scooped up, in my opinion, probably before. So I think, what most Colts coaches, Ballard, players have said, they like what they've got. So it's interesting. A lot of news today for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of fun news, some, wishy-washy, but this is about how the day goes. We're about to get a bunch of camp updates tomorrow, a lot of things to watch. It's an exciting time. Football is officially back, guys. So we've got a lot to look forward to as this season goes on. We've got Andrew Luck back. We've got some dynamic playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. We've got some young defenders that are going to be fighting hard for spots. This these practices are going to be lickety split. Everybody get here, get there, get our stuff done, and get out of here. That's, to me, this just, it already has the feels, of a much more prepared coaching staff, a much more prepared system in general. So this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I hope that you guys are too, because it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have a lot to talk about as the season progresses, I think. So like I said, we've got another podcast coming up right after this. We're going to go through the position breakdowns of the wide receivers, and then we're going to be done, all heading into camp tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining me. We will talk to you here real shortly, right here on the Colts Cast.